Today I want to prepare another restaurant recipe from a restaurant trade journal. These are magazines, as I always explain, that go out to restaurants because the advertisements are for things like restaurant equipment rather than home appliances. I like these recipes because they're created by a chef for their restaurant, and so they almost always turn out well. And this is for white Bolognese pasta. If you're familiar with Bolognese, it's a chunky sauce, a ragù made with meat and or vegetables, that sort of thing, as opposed to a smooth sauce like marinara. There were two things about this recipe that intrigued me. One was that it uses pappardelle, and I like making pappardelle pasta. You don't have to use pappardelle. You can use fettucine, linguine. My mom used to make a ragù dish with elbow macaroni. But I like making pappardelle. It's the second largest of the flat noodles, lasagna being the largest. And the second thing about this recipe that intrigued me was that it uses chicken livers that I had to puree in a food processor. And I have never done that before. Talk about looking gross. I mean, I could describe it to you, but there's nothing I could say that wouldn't be offensive. I've never pureed chicken livers before. They're gross. Anyways, let's make this white Bolognese pasta. What I have here is 1/2 cup, or about 70 grams of chopped pancetta, which is an Italian bacon. It doesn't have the hickory smoked flavoring in it that you see in American bacon. And I'm going to saute this, fry this to render some of that fat out, most of that fat out, and I want to cook it until it's just beginning to brown lightly. I have to chop a shallot. I'm going to do that while my meat, the pancetta, is cooking. This is a very large shallot. I don't need all of this. So let's see. I'm going to cut it in half, sort of. Take the skin off. Take the whole outer layer off. It's not going to matter. And then I'm going to slice this up the same way that I do onions, or mince this up. I want to go very close together with these lines because I need this minced really fine. All right. And cut across close, and that'll give me a nice fine mince for my shallot. My pancetta now is just starting to brown. I turn the heat down under that. I'm going to turn that heat back up again. Pancetta, by the way, is usually sold sliced, but I happen to find some diced. If you buy it in the slices, just dice it up. What I want to do now is add some garlic. I'm going to put 3 cloves of garlic in there. Okay, there's my 3rd clove of garlic going in. And now I'm going to put the shallot in there. And this is 1 tablespoon of fresh thyme. And that pops and crackles when it gets in the heat. Hear it popping. Snap, crackle, pop. All right. And then I'm going to cook this for just about maybe 3 or 4 minutes until I see the shallot looking nicely translucent. Okay, that looks good. And if you hear that background pattering noise, that's rain on the roof. This really is a mobile home with a metal roof, and it's raining today, so it's a good day to be in the kitchen. What I have here is 3/4 of a cup, which is about 175 milliliters of dry white wine. I'm going to pour that in there, bring up my heat, and I'm going to use that to deglaze the pan, which there isn't much in there to deglaze. And I'm going to simmer this to reduce that liquid by maybe half. That rain is getting really loud now. That's one thing about living in a mobile home. The metal roof just really makes a lot of noise when it rains or hails. Okay, what I'm adding here is 1 cup, which is about 200 grams of ground pork. If you have an aversion to pork, you can use ground turkey if you'd like. I'm going to bring my heat up a little bit, and I'm going to cook this until it begins to look fairly well cooked. I don't need to cook it all the way through at this point because it's going to finish cooking in a later step. That looks pretty good right there. That pork looks well cooked. That's fine. Now what I have here is 1.5 cups, which is about 350 milliliters of heavy cream. That's where this gets the name white Bolognese. And then I'm going to grind some black pepper in there. And finally, put a pinch of salt in there. Not a lot, because I'm going to be adjusting that for salt later on. All right, I'm going to bring this up to a boil, reduce the heat. I'm cooking on medium-high right now. Most of the time I've been cooking on medium or medium-high. And then I'm going to cook this for about 10 minutes, simmer it over medium-low heat when it comes up to a boil. There's my timer. This has been going for 10 minutes. I stirred this every few minutes as this was cooking. A couple of ideas came to me when I was cooking this. If you can't find pancetta, what would be really good in this is prosciutto. In fact, the next time I make this, I might add prosciutto as well as the pancetta. I reduced the heat down to almost low as this was starting to thicken. If you want it thicker, you could cook it 5 minutes longer, but I think that's plenty good enough. I want to see what's going to happen when I add the chicken livers. So here's the grossest thing in the world. This is chicken livers that have been pureed. And this is 1/3 cup, which weighed about 80 grams. And again, I pureed these in a food processor. I want to bring my heat back up, bringing it up to medium. And I'm going to cook this for another 10 minutes, and I'm going to watch this for how thick it is. If it starts to look too thick, I can water it down a little bit with some half and half. Okay, if you want to, if you like things a little bit spicy hot, you could add maybe half a tablespoon of red pepper flakes. I'm going to put that in the recipe as optional. And there's my timer going off again. This is cooked for an additional 10 minutes. I like the looks of that. If I need to add a little bit moisture, I can add maybe a tablespoon or two of half and half. I'm going to taste this. It's probably going to need some salt. And by the way, I tasted this before the chicken liver went in. It was delicious. So if you wanted to leave the chicken liver out, you could. Yeah, needs a pinch of salt again. I'll turn my heat off. Ooh, that's good. That's delicious. That's perfect. Just perfect. I'm going to put a lid on that, and I can concentrate on my pasta next. So here's my pasta dough. I made this last night because it always does better if it sits for a little bit. I'm going to divide this in half and work with it half at a time. And I have my pasta machine here. Just to explain one thing about the machine, the dial here on this one, this is an Atlas 150. They're available on Amazon. The dial goes from 1 to 7, and I find that for most flat pasta, number 5 is the best for flat noodles. And this is a flour duster, just lightly dusting that with flour. I'm going to start running this through my machine. So now I'm on number 5 here, and this is looking pretty good. If you want to learn how to make pasta from scratch, on my website in the basics section of the recipe archive, there is a recipe for making pasta from scratch, and there's a link there to a YouTube video. So there's my sheet of pasta. I can start cutting this up. I'm actually going to set this aside and work my other piece. Okay, so there's one of my pieces of pasta. I'm going to use a fluted cutter to cut my pappardelle. going to start off by trimming the edges. Save these scraps because they're good for soup. I'm going to save mine because I'm going to be making chicken soup for my dinner tonight. Chicken soup on a rainy day is wonderful. Okay, as far as the size, in one of my books it says that pappardelle ranges in size from region to region throughout Italy. Cut it any which way you like. I'm actually going to cut this into 5 pieces. Like so. And then I'll start trimming these edges. Again, saving the scraps. And let's see, how long do I want to make these? I'm going to make them big today. So there is one of my pieces of pappardelle. That's a nice big noodle. You can make them smaller if you want. I've seen them smaller, as long but thinner this way. Cut them any which way you like. Meanwhile, I am heating water on my stove, heating it to boiling. Because this is fresh pasta, it's going to cook in probably a minute to 2 minutes. If you're using store-bought pasta, cook it according to package directions. All right, I want to flour that so it doesn't stick to itself. Put this in a bowl and then do my other sheet of pasta. Although I don't think of pappardelle as being a rustic pasta, I'm going to use a rustic plate for this. This was made in 2009 by someone named LR. If you're out there, LR, I'm making your plate famous. So here is my cooked pappardelle. It is really raining out there. It sounds wonderful on the roof. I might as well just put it all on there. More is better. I did add a little bit of half and half, less than a quarter cup to this, because it just did seem a little too thick after it had sat for 10 minutes or so. If you wanted to, you could garnish that with a little bit of fresh parsley or some chopped basil. I'm just going to enjoy that as is. There is white Bolognese sauce with pappardelle pasta. So I am so looking forward to this. Let's see, where do I dig in? Pappardelle pasta can be kind of difficult to eat because it's so big. It's like 4 or 5 of these pieces of pappardelle pasta are like one serving. It's big. Oh, that's good. That is very good. So it's just time for lunch. Excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy my white Bolognese pasta. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com, and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.